Hello, welcome to 501 week number 3. So this week we're looking at finishing up that Google for Educator level 1 certification. You're doing the last course module and then taking the end of course assessment. That's the bulk of what you're doing this week in week 3. There's not an assignment due this week, just the discussion board. Let's talk about that. So we're talking about SAMR, TPACK, and then which one you like more, SAMR or TPACK. Teachers love acronyms. I'm going to explain both of those shortly. You're going to read a bit about them, watch a little bit about them, and then dig into them. So you're going to reflect a little bit on using the SAMR model, using the TPACK framework, and then which one you like more. That's your discussion board. We talked about that Google one, and then all that's left this week is actually digging into SAMR and TPACK. So let's separate these completely. Maybe I didn't be on this side for SAMR. So SAMR is ways of kind of categorizing tech integration with substitution, augmentation, modification, and redefinition. I used to think that the goal was to progress from no tech to the SAMR and then get to redefinition. And now I realize that actually it's just ways of categorizing. It's I don't know, that's a bad example. I was going to say it's like pie is better than ice cream, but it's more that you're describing various delicious desserts that you love and you're not necessarily ranking them. One of them, you'll describe it and someone will be like, dude, that's fantastic. And other ones you're like, that's fantastic. Kit Kats, I approve. Vanilla ice cream, if it's Tillamook Old Fashioned, I approve, which by the way is the best vanilla ice cream that you can just buy kind of out in the world. So the S, my friend Sylvia Duckworth has a great sketch note about this. I'm going to use her example because you can just Google SAMR, SAMR, Sylvia Duckworth and look at it if you would like. You can do that right now in another tab while you listen to me. So visiting the ocean. The first one that's actually not part of SAMR is just no tech. So I'm going to explain various ways you can interact with the ocean. The first one is what my family did last weekend. We were driving up from LA back to the Bay Area, stopped at Pismo Beach, and we did not do stuff in the ocean. We walked by, bought some barbecue sauce from Moe's and said, there's the ocean. That's pretty awesome, right? So the education for that is no tech. You're just there is the ocean. And I would say 90% of the time when we're visiting the ocean, certainly whenever my wife is involved, it's the no tech. It's just I see the ocean. Substitution, right? So let me pull up and make sure I get this right. SAMR, Sylvia Duckworth. It even autofills in Google. All right, so in her example, we have that substitution is like a kayak, right? Let's go kayaking, maybe go to Monterey and be like, hey, look, there's some sea otters, right? Sea otters? Yeah. So it's much more than just kind of looking at the ocean or standing on the pier going, there are waves, they are pretty. You're actually doing your thing, right? So if we just narrow this example to be Google Docs, so no tech would be pencil and paper. Substitution would be instead of, it's really weird, my music just started playing randomly. Instead of pencil and paper, let's use Google Docs, right? Because you can copy and paste, you can get formatting, you can share it, and that's substitution, all right? So you're in the ocean, but just kayak. Augmentation might be snorkeling, right? So let's head maybe to Maui and see some coral reefs, see some fish, see some Hawaiian monk seals. And with that, you need a little bit of specialized tools, right? So this is definitely not Pismo Beach, icy ocean. And it's much more than you would typically do on your day at the beach. The Google Doc version, sorry, music just randomly keeps playing on this AirPod Home. I wonder, am I balancing it on here? Is this giving us issues? We're just gonna keep going because that happens sometimes. No, I'm not gonna unplug it. What if I move this? We're just gonna keep rolling. And then tap it. See, the problem is I put my phone on the HomePod Mini and I think it was pushing the button. So, Google Doc, augmentation. You are using Google Doc, not pencil and paper. You're typing on it, formatting in it. Augmentation might be submit it in Google Classroom, work on it with a classmate and get some feedback with comments, right? Like way different from what you would typically do with pencil and paper, kind of reformatting stuff, but also like kind of looks the same, right? The substitution and augmentation are more about enhancing things and less about like really transformation. So let's move into modification, the M of SAMR. We're going to the beach. I'm not just saying, ooh, pretty, Pismo. I'm not just like kayaking in Monterey. I'm not snorkeling, augmentation in Maui. I am now like legit scuba diving, modification, like things have changed. Maybe for here, we'll go down like to Catalina, take a certification thing, and you're able to do stuff that the human body cannot do without like scuba tank regulator fins and weights around your waist. I don't know. I would love to go. I have not been. So this is where like me painting this picture kind of falls apart. Looking at the Google Doc part, it's not just writing, pencil and paper. It's not just a Google Doc. You haven't shared it just with your teacher. Getting feedback. Modification might be like, let me work on it, share it with a classmate, get some feedback from a classmate, and then integrate those. I might get run it through like School AI and get some feedback with that, and then use that to actually improve it. I might actually go into insert images and get some more interesting imagery so it behaves more like an old school kind of web page or like news article with images that are like left or right justified, and working with the wrap, stuff like that, linking to other things where like it becomes this really robust, bordering on kind of website looking thing than just here's a 5-paragraph essay. All right, that's modification like scuba diving. And then finally, redefinition. This is where you like rent an entire submarine and you're going down and looking at it's the one I'm looking at my 14-year-old anglerfish, right? The anglerfish. You're like, there's an anglerfish in real life. I've never seen this thing. It has the jaws that like all of that stuff. Like that is not a normal day at the beach. That is far from scuba diving or snorkeling or kayaking or just being at Pismo Beach going, look, beach. What do you like to do? I like to do beach. Redefinition is like a whole nother thing. So with the Google Doc, this would be just taking it kind of to its limit. So really robust visual. Something that I think actually more than just kind of the visuals of it is actually using it to leverage commenting and feedback. And so my favorite lesson I think I've ever done is when I was teaching second grade. My friend Scott Bedley is teaching fifth grade. He has a great podcast, by the way, Bedley Brothers. His fifth graders would actually edit my second graders' writing two different ways. Asynchronously, where we just staggered it by a week. And so my second graders would type it up, which takes a while for a second grader, right? So like this was really like being intentional about how we're using technology. And then share it with his fifth graders. Fifth graders would get on the same Google Doc, leave really specific comments. And then my second graders would go through and could resolve those comments, reply to them, make those changes, and their writing was like the best writing I've ever seen from them. We also did this synchronously, which was tricky because second graders are slow to type, and this was before dictation was really like reliable. So synchronous, we actually found a time where we both could get access to devices and work on this lesson at this time, which is no small feat. And then as my second graders are typing, we give them a bit of a head start. His fifth graders were in there in real time, and they were fast enough that they were actually able to edit like and comment on most of my second graders. This is where it's not just in the same place. They were maybe 50 miles apart from each other, and we're able to give students like real-time feedback about their writing. Something that even if you're a great teacher, you can't give real-time feedback to your entire class all at once. And so for me, this was redefinition. The really cool part of this lesson is that it was actually really simple technology-wise. It was more complicated to like find somebody who was down to try this, to find a time that actually worked. If we're doing this synchronously, it was all like logistic stuff, but the actual technology was like share a Google Doc. Simple, done. And I love that lesson. The other really cool thing is that Scott, with his fifth graders, also went up and worked with Sean Zebarth in Huntington Beach, because he had 11th graders and he was like, I don't care about them writing. I need them to edit. They need practice editing. And the only way I can get them to edit stuff is to write stuff. But like, the interesting thing for him was editing. And so Scott's fifth graders were helping my second graders as kind of buddies, as mentors. And then above them, Sean's class was helping edit. So they were getting all that editing practice with Scott's kids, and then they were getting that feedback. And if you ever tried to edit, I think his class at the time was 38 students, you ever try to edit 38 students' essays and give them anywhere near real-time feedback, like, that's impossible. So please feel free to take any of those ideas and run with them. There's the SAMR model applies to like all the things. My favorite example is this with kind of Google Docs and thinking through it. And if we think, like if we go deep into Sylvia's sketch note of like SAMR with the redefinition being in a submarine, when I go to the beach, I do not want to go to the beach in a submarine every time. In fact, maybe just once ever. Like, that would be cool to be in a submarine that's more than just at Disneyland that's really, submerged this far. But to actually be like in a small submarine and see like an anglerfish, that would be cool. I don't need to do that every day. I would not want to do that every day. Similarly, I think the analogy actually holds that collaborating with another class and having fifth graders edit your second graders writing, or having 11th graders edit your fifth graders writing, or whatever permutation of that you do, is amazing. Not an everyday thing. Should not be an everyday thing. And whenever we look at these pieces of technology and how we integrate it and how we move from like enhancement to transformation, a lot of times just substitution is what you need. I just want Google Docs because I can open up on an iPad and then a laptop at home. Done. Like, that's cool. There's less judgment than I initially thought there would be around like substitution's bad. It's like, no, it's a way of categorizing, right? So that is SAMR. TPACK you're going to read, I'm going to switch to this side of the screen for TPACK, a pretty lengthy framework. The PDF is 11 pages. So I'm going to describe this a little bit less, just because like the abstract alone is like half a page. But the idea of this is, so TPACK stands for technology, pedagogy, and content knowledge. And it's usually displayed as like three overlapping Venn diagrams. And it's ways of thinking about how you frame what you do as a teacher and how you interact with students. That's the way I tend to think about it. So a lot of times, and this is what would often bother me in like blog posts or presentations, people focus on like just the technology. Like, let me explain what Google Tools does. And like, okay, cool. But for me, it's always that plus something. So let's again just talk about whatever, Google Docs plus pedagogy, right? So how do we get students editing each other's papers, leaving comments on each other's papers? For me, that's technology plus pedagogy. Or content knowledge, how do we get Google Docs with 9th grade history? All right, so like, let's do that part of, these are supposed to be Venn diagrams, it's not making sense. Or like, how do we do that plus just like 2nd grade writing? Or we could talk not even about technology, but just pedagogy and content knowledge, right? So how do we integrate, my examples just jump right to technology. Like, how do we do writing in 9th grade history? Like, what's the pedagogy behind like good 9th grade history? If we bring in technology with that, then suddenly it's like, let's use Notebook LM to find some primary resources, and then how the pedagogy conversation is actually what I think is more interesting. How do we actually use Notebook LM to like interact with those tools in ways that otherwise might be a bit overwhelming? Like a 300-page PDF that's an original primary source, not primary, but PDF, like a secondary source, I suppose, of a primary source. The pedagogy part is like, how do we use Notebook LM, which is the technology piece, to teach the thing? So it for me, if I were to do the discussion board, like SAMR makes a whole lot of sense with kind of the categories and not the judgment, but just the categories of it. TPAC, I know a lot of people that love TPAC and will like fight to the death for TPAC. That is not me. I find it super useful, particularly when I'm thinking about working with teachers and kind of thinking lesson design. That if we're only talking about like the tool, they're like, oh, we're only talking about technology, only the T. Let's actually talk about like your content knowledge. Like how does this tool fit that? And then I think most interestingly, because it's such like a developed art form, is the pedagogy, is how do you actually teach it and implement it in a way that is meaningful and students are excited to do. So that is TPAC, that is SAMR, that is week 3. If you have any questions, reach out. Otherwise, happy week 3, everybody.